What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Pick Swap Podcast. I am here with Sean Bernard. What's up, Sean?
I think I have finally hit my Ben Simmons breaking point. So I feel like we've pushed this off enough, but this will be the Ben Simmons episode for sure.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of them have been the Ben Simmons episode. It doesn't, they're all getting mixed together now. But well, before we even get into that we are recording this after our interview with Cjv McCormick. He's one of our guys. He's works over at Sports Illustrated. He did a little bit of work with the Liberty Line, obviously. But he joins us. We have a great conversation about Ben and the current state of the Sixers and the potential possibilities of what this may turn into over the next couple of days or weeks, or who knows how long it'll drag out. But stay tuned for that. It'll be towards the end of this. And I mean, it's hard to really know what's going on anymore. And really, the reports have been going on all summer, and we've gotten to this point where our head coach is on ESPN on national television talking about this situation. And
So insane.
it's gross. It's really gross. I've never, ever in my wildest dreams, like, I'm thinking back a couple years, even 2 years ago, and I'm thinking this is the worst case scenario is they don't win. They go 6 years and they don't win, and that's the worst case scenario. But really, it turns out that the worst case scenario is
Ben Simmons
that Ben
ending the
Simmons'
process.
request to trade is threatening to hold out, and the Doc Rivers ends up on ESPN pleading for him to come back. So it's been a whirlwind for sure.
Yeah, no, Sixers look terrible in all this, all around terrible. It's our head coach is begging for a guy to come back on national television. Our max deal star player is somewhere, who knows where, just all Sixers personnel speaking to his agent in camp and whatever mouthpieces are speaking for him. Nobody knows what our roster is going to look like, and training camp is a couple days away at this point, and we're supposed to play games in like a month from now. So yeah, not great vibes all around.
Dude, this sucks. It really just does kind of suck really bad. But there's, we'll kind of digest it as much as we can. So do you want to, let's get right into what you have. We got a couple suggestions on some trade rumors or some trade suggestions. So run those up. We'll talk about them briefly before we get into our interview with Kev.
Yeah, let's start with this one. So James, what are your thoughts on trade with the Spurs? Simmons and Shake Milton for Dejounte Murray, Derek White, and 3 first-round picks.
So personally, all right, I really do like Dejounte Murray. I'm a big fan of his defense, the way he plays, his aggressiveness, his length and athleticism. He's like obviously not the same as Ben, because Ben's kind of like very unique as a defender because of his size and strength. And Murray's not nearly as like a physical presence as he is like just a guy that can creep up on you. He makes a lot of defensive plays. I like Derek White as well, but again, like, this is not, none of these are going to be like that superstar swap. But I mean, I guess I like that. I do like Dejounte Murray, and I think, for, not that I'm going to go too far into it, but like for Ben's interest, San Antonio is a place where he would definitely thrive, I think.
Yeah, I think he would be excellent with the Spurs, but that is none of my consideration.
Yeah, right.
Murray, I like a lot, and he's a guy who's taken like the career arc, and what we hoped Simmons would kind of take is he came in the league, couldn't shoot threes whatsoever, shot under 1 attempt per game in his first 2 seasons in the league, I believe, and has gradually built that to where he is kind of a respectable outside game at this point. Not that he's ever going to be a dead eye, but he shoots it at a regular rate in a couple of game, which is all you can ask for. And it's cool to see his development. He's a guy that, again, none of these trades you're going to come out of here feeling excellent about it, but he's a fine player. Derek White's great, and I love the first-round picks. Any of these is all about stacking assets and being ready to swing for the fences on some sort of deal. So those to me are way more than just like a brush over. Another one, potential trade with the Pacers, Ben and Shake for TJ Warren, Malcolm Brogdon, and a first-round pick.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, again, it kind of works. And thinking of fit, I mean, Warren missed like all of last year, right?
Yeah, he had an elective surgery and did not play. So, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a question mark there with him coming back. He is a notorious Sixers killer, but I mean, so is Al Horford. So don't want to get too far into it. I do like Brogdon's fit here. I would be remiss to admit to wanting him here because I have been so against the Malcolm Brogdon train in Philadelphia for a while.
Hmm.
He was a guy that I really, really wanted, as a free agent in place of when they did sign Al Horford. I was like, I really wanted that money to go to Malcolm Brogdon because he did make a very similar contract. So I don't know, man. I like Brogdon's fit here. He's just a very quiet and solid player. And again, the first are intriguing as well.
Yeah, so I think the thought process here, and I know there's some people very excited about this, and I think Zach Chavalella is a guy who is pretty high
He
on this
loves
kind of
Malcolm
deal.
Brogdon.
Yeah. So when thinking about the lineup, so it would obviously be Embiid, Tobias, probably Warren and Brogdon, and then probably Curry or as your last one, or depending on what you want to do with that last slot. But that's probably your lineup. Is both these guys are looked at as starters, and the idea behind this is getting building a roster around Embiid and complementary pieces in the same kind of vein that the Bucks did with Giannis and that. I think the gap between Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton versus the supporting cast we have behind Embiid is massive, and I don't think that we can. To me, this isn't guys that we can follow that model with. So this isn't kind of like I would prefer the first round picks with Murray and White to me than this deal.
Yeah, I would be way more intrigued. Like, and maybe again, this might be a little bit of personal bias, but I am a huge fan of DeJounte Murray and his game. And when I think about what the Sixers would be losing, um, potentially with trading Ben away, is the biggest factor is that defensive aspect to it and what he brings on that side of the ball. And like I said, like obviously Murray doesn't give you as much versatility necessarily, but when you're thinking about who's going to chase around a guard and who's going to put pressure on the ball, while Ben is obviously elite and then probably the best in the game at that, DeJounte Murray's up there and he's gonna, get a lot of deflections, a lot of steals, and he is not, he's a dog in that sense where, if he has an assignment, whether it be, I don't know, Trae Young or Kyrie Irving or whoever it is, like he is ready for that challenge. And if you are gonna lose Ben in this situation, I think that defensive aspect, and not that Brogdon's a solid defender as well, but like he's just not the same way. Like he doesn't have the physical attributes as a Ben or DeJounte Murray. So I
Hmm.
would prefer the Spurs move over the Pacers.
Yeah, and we'll do one last one here. Same Ben and Shake. And first off, I'm totally cool with including Shaken in these packages, just based on
Yeah,
uh, nothing against Shake, but Tyrese Maxey's our guy.
yeah.
Uh, but Ben and Shake for Kevin Love, Colin Sexton, and 3 first-round picks.
Uh, I mean, I guess so, right? Like
Yeah,
Texans, I feel like in that tier though of guys where it's like, okay, you didn't get the superstar, but whether it's Cj McCollum or DeJounte Murray or Colin Sexton, like I feel like all those guys are kind of like you can make that out to be a decent reward for whatever it is that you got away with what you got with trading away Ben. So
yeah,
I've always been a Kevin Love fan, but like he doesn't really fit here. You know what I mean?
yeah. I think this is my favorite trade. I think Kevin Love and Tobias Harris are a nightmare next to each other, and probably I wouldn't try to let that happen as little as possible. And I think Kevin Love's probably coming off the bench for us, which I'm okay with. Sexton is a guy who's intriguing to me. There's a part of me that really likes Sexton, but I also kind of think he's a good player on a bad team only kind of guy and a little bit of an empty stats to that regard. But I think him and Maxey, even though it'd be undersized, would be a nightmare to just in the way those guys would push the pace and be menace and like I think that would be cool in bursts to see. And once again, 3 first-round picks on a team that probably isn't contending or competing really yet is intriguing. And I think that's my favorite of the bunch. I also like Kevin Love has only 2 years left on the deal. So that becomes an expiring contract, which is easier to package and once again can open cap spaces in the long run. So I think if I have to rank them, that would be my favorite out of the bunch. But like we've said, like I don't sit here feeling awesome about getting Kevin Love and Colin Sexton for Ben Simmons.
Yeah, I feel like my favorite is the deal, like the potential deal with the Spurs. I feel like Murray would definitely be like if there was a consolation prize for all this, if it wasn't De'Aaron Fox, who I'm also a big fan of, I think DeJounte Murray. Like I do have a weird like subsection of guards that I'm very fond of in the NBA, and like Murray, Fox, I mean Lonzo Ball, of course, but like there's a weird like group of them that I am really fans of, and Murray falls into that. Shout out those people that sent in those.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Yeah, go
And
ahead.
Yeah, like I mean, like you said, if you had to rank, here's a little other question for you. If you had to rank Cj McCollum, Colin Sexton, Deontay Murray, and then Malcolm Brogdon, how would you rank those four?
Sorry, it was CJ Murray and who?
Sexton and Brogdon.
In terms of, I mean CJ's probably one there, number one on that. And then for me, it goes Murray, Sexton, Brogdon.
Okay. I think I would give Sexton a nod above Murray in my mind, but I think that's
Okay.
fair.
Yeah. It's I mean it's hard to say. It's hard to know how they would all fit.
Right.
Um but just in the interest of like keeping Curry in your backcourt, uh Murray defensively gives you a really good boost on that side. So do you have the guys though that sent
Uh,
those in or not?
I'm getting there.
We can tag them if you need.
Yeah, we will tag you and give you a shout out. So I appreciate you guys for letting that in. And that was I'm sorry, that was at Sixers Menace that gave us the those three options there, and Nick Kershio for the CJ McCollum feedback. So
Word.
great stuff.
Well,
Appreciate
yeah,
it.
we appreciate you guys, and that kind of segues directly into what we wanted to mention before we get into the interview with Kev. We've done a little business talk today
Yeah.
for the boys, a little Picks Walk business talk. So, we connected with the founder of Airspace today. We talked a lot about that. So if you don't know what that is, which I didn't before today, it's kind of like a community collective talking space for people to discuss, argue, debate, and just have conversation about certain things. We would obviously have one here for the Pick Swap podcast about the Sixers, our podcast, and do mailbag questions in that way. So we're definitely trying to get that set up. We think it would be a great way to interact with everyone that listens, a great way to get Twitter involved and have a little bit of a space here and get, the people that listen a little bit more involved with the podcast. So keep an eye out for that. We are going to be starting that up soon. And without further ado, Kevin McCormick on the podcast. And, we get to talk about a whole bunch of things: Doc Rivers, Ben Simmons, trade rumors, John Wall, and Kevin Love. Who knows? A lot of stuff. So we hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll talk to you guys after. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Pick Swap podcast. It's the usual crew, me and Sean Bernard. And then we are visited by an old friend, one of the true greatest to ever do it, Kevin McCormick, and who I so graciously call him K-Mac. Kevin, thank you for joining the pod, and what is up?
No problem. This is hashtag the return. I'm like LeBron
The
in
return.
2016.
So, I mean, we've gone so many weeks and months, and we end up in the same spot, it seems like, every time. So today there's more news about Ben Simmons. Yesterday, the Woj report, everything that's gone into this. What are you feeling like today, Kevin? And then Sean, you'll go after. So just tell me how you're feeling right now about the whole situation and what you think is going to happen in the next, coming up to training camp next week.
I feel like nothing's changed. This past month, it's been quote unquote like news, but there's been nothing really new. It's all just new guys saying the same stuff. All the same, Ben's not going to show up to training camp. Ben wants to trade. Cool. We've known this since the middle of August. It's just like when someone like Woj talks about it, I feel like it gives it more national steam. And when you see someone talking about it like that, it gives it a little more rapport, while someone might see a report from Keith Pompey. And where if you're, a Minnesota or Sacramento fan, you might not put much stock into that just because he's a Philadelphia beat writer. But yeah, seeing Woj talk about it, I mean, it's just more of the same. It feels like both sides are still not working together. It feels like the relationship is tarnished, and a trade is eventually coming. When it comes, I don't know. It feels like this is definitely going to drag into the regular season, but there's still no telling how this ends. 4 months later?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It feels like a lot of the same storyline. And I mean, I feel like we've been here all summer with obviously things haven't been great. Training camp's right around the corner is really the only thing that's changed, in the fact that there is some sort of deadline there. But I really don't think it changed anything on either side. I would be shocked if he shows up to camp. I think he means it when he says he's holding out, or when Rich Paul is holding out. I think it's crazy Doc Rivers is out on First Take talking about it to the national world. But it feels like the Sixers are just turning into more of a circus right now, and I'm not thrilled in the spot anybody's at, to be honest.
It's ever since the downfall of Sam Hinkie and that whole thing. I feel like that's just what I mean. Maybe the process started this all, and this is what we're reaping what we sow back in the day when the process was I guess like a deal with the devil at this point because we just can never get out of our own way. But Doc Rivers today on 2 different shows on ESPN went out of his way to say like we want him back. We're committed. We think we can win with Ben. We just need to get him in the building. And to me, it's hard to take too much away from that because he did say that earlier this summer. The biggest thing for me was the fact that he said we need to get him in the building. So to me, that seems we need to get him away from Rich Paul and Clutch Sports in California, and we need to show him how much that he can help here, or how much we think he can help here, or whatever it is. Or do you think that was just saving face at this point and trying to take the leverage back?
It's absolutely saving face. It's no coincidence that 24 hours after Woj's big report comes out, that Doc Rivers is all over ESPN trying to do damage control. The one thing I will say that's changed from the beginning of the summer to now is early on, we heard the report that Rich Paul went to Chicago for the draft combine to meet with Daryl Morey, to meet with Elton Brand, to talk about Ben Simmons' future, what both sides wanted. And it felt like that's most likely when the trade request came. Reports at that time said it hadn't yet, but there was probably inklings of it. And in the beginning, it felt like both sides were working together to find a common goal. And then we get through the summer. At some point through the summer, there was that realistic, kind of idea that Ben Simmons might start the season on the Philadelphia 76ers. And that is when Rich Paul started to use his backdoor power. And now it feels like both sides are now no longer working together. And now it's just move, counter move with news and rumors coming about. So I think just Doc Rivers coming on, saving face, trying to talk about still wanting Ben Simmons and trying to fix that relationship is more just the Sixers counter move to Clutch, letting out that report and letting Woj run with it.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a saving face move. I also think this is probably the only way that they can realistically get anything into Simmons' head at this point, in that everything is definitely being filtered through Rich Paul and is the one calling the shots. And it was pointed out by yesterday that probably the only way that this is savable is if Simmons does fire Rich Paul and move on. And I just think that's just simply not going to happen just at this. And to credit Doc, first off, I think like there's a lot too much being made about what he said at following the game in Game 7. And if I think this was a growing tension since far before that, when we think about the Harden news and everything that happened with Simmons building up to that point. And thinking back to the actual like Rivers quotes, I went back from the right after Game 7, and the first question he was asked regarding Simmons was from Kai Carlin, who said, Ben only took 4 shots. He passed up on the dunk late. Is there anything you have to talk to him about, or is that just nerves, or what do you think? And Rivers' reply was, yeah, I don't know. Obviously he struggled from the free throw line, and that became a factor in the series. There's no doubt about that. I still believe in him, but we have work to do. We're going to have to get in the gym, put a lot of work in, and go forward. And then the one that kind of gets the most play was the question from David Murphy, who said, hey, Doc, do you think Ben Simmons will be the point guard, can still be a point guard for a championship team like the one you guys want to become? And Rivers' reply to that was, yeah, David, I don't know the question or the answer right now, so I don't know the answer to that. And neither of those are fully indicting of Ben. They're obviously not complimentary in any mean, but like that's not worth criticizing a guy and not fragmenting a franchise. So I think it's much to do about nothing. I think the root of this issue is definitely kind of Simmons' camp and who he has surrounded has made this a bigger deal than it needed to be. And at this point, like I don't see this getting fixed in a Sixers jersey ever, but I don't think the trade is imminent necessarily.
So I guess this bears the question now, like obviously the question is where do they go from here? But a lot of what I've seen today and a lot of conversations that Kevin, you and I have been a part of, is like this is much more than a Ben Simmons and Sixers issue. This is a guy that signed a max contract extension, has 4 years left on that extension, is now, threatening to hold out, requesting a trade, and kind of forcing his way out of a situation that he literally signed himself into less than 2 years ago. So this is a major league issue. So do you see something that could become, whether it's the Sixers putting their foot down and saying, okay, put your money where your mouth is. Let's see what you actually do when it comes to losing millions of dollars by the day, or is it something that they just have to deal with because that's the way that the league is going?
It is treading a very fine line of where does player empowerment get too far. And I've said it, we've seen in Twitter messages, James, that I really feel that the league should consider stepping in and trying to rectify the situation and essentially force Simmons to show up, because we've seen players request trades in the past. Nobody's blaming Ben Simmons for requesting a trade. There's nothing wrong with that. If a team has the power to actively hold a player in discussions all offseason, then the player should have a right in his own to request a trade if he feels the situation isn't best for him. But like you said, Ben Simmons is only in year 2 of his max extension and is essentially saying, hey, I'm going to take my ball and go home. Give me what I want. I'm not coming back. And if he gets what he wants, what's to stop this next generation of stars to getting their rookie max extensions, getting that extra year on the deal, that extra money, and then essentially forcing their way once they have their big contract locked up? So there definitely is a very, while the Sixers have their own issue, I think league-wide, this has the potential to spark some very serious debates of if player empowerment is going off the deep end, depending on how this finishes and if the league decides to step in.
Yeah, totally agree. It's definitely like every NBA team should be paying attention to how this ends up finishing out and what exactly happens here and what the standard is set moving forward. And like you said, you can't blame Simmons for asking to be traded with that, but you totally can for how he's handled this and the position he's put him in and not talking to anybody. And the fact of the matter is, you are under contract to be a 76er next year. And it's one thing to say you're going to hold out. It's a lot more difficult when the checks aren't being cashed. So there is part of me that thinks that maybe a little down the line he ends up showing up, because first off, Morey is too smart to sell too low on him. And even with all the bad PR and everything and the media storm that has been going on and will continue to go on as much as this drags, like if they do not get the proper return for Simmons to set themselves up going forward, the championship hopes of this Sixers core is absolutely over. And that's what makes this so difficult from Morey's perspective, is dealing with all the hits that come with it, all the Rich Paul. And Rich Paul is not a light guy to go tangle with and playing a game of chicken with. So there's a lot that goes with it. And Tyrese Maxey's a major piece of that. Them being under the same agent certainly matters, and the relationship there is not one you want to tarnish, because Maxey certainly, with all the issues with Simmons, there's nothing with Maxey. And he's loved by the city. From everything it seems, he loves it back. And we want him here long term. So there's a lot going on with this. And the pendulum's definitely swung in the power of players. And just this, just thinking about, it's so tough to wrap your mind around, not this deal was signed in good faith between the Sixers and Simmons, and things certainly worsened since then in a relationship and just in the team. For the trajectory of the team is not where it would have hoped to be at this point, but that's no excuse to stop building that and just show up and do your job is kind of the bottom line. And the other part is, if you're Ben Simmons and you truly want to get traded, the best thing you can do for yourself is show up, do your job right, play well, and be the player that we all know is there. And you're certainly better than what you showed in the playoffs. That's also frustrating me, is this has turned into such a no-win situation.
Yeah, and it's I guess first order of business is getting Maxey out of Clutch Sports entirely. That's another part to this whole thing is does Clutch Sports kind of maintain too much power as an agency that's really has no relation to the NBA aside from who they represent? And is Rich Paul overstepping his boundaries as an agent or a manager? And Ben, I feel like at this point there was so much connection there between Ben and the city, and it's really kind of insane to see the fall through between that relationship, and not only just Ben and the Sixers, but Ben and the fans here. He was a guy that, had a lot of expectations, obviously, but there was a grace period and there was a lot of love there between both sides. And I guess the other question I have is, and I just saw a Tobias Harris tweet, and it was a little bit cryptic, I won't lie. But Tobias isn't a guy to do that really, but it was a picture of Luka and Boban, and someone tweeted at him and was like, I want to see what Tobias Harris has to say about this. And he just tweeted, what a week, periods, what a week. So it seems like obviously these guys are, the Sixers posted a picture of Furkan and Tobias and Maxey and Shake today in the facility. What do you think these guys are thinking or looking at this in what way? It has to affect them as well, right?
If I'm Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris, I would feel a very strong type of way of the way Ben Simmons has handled this, because they've all had their turns of being criticized. Joel Embiid talked about it a few weeks ago when his name first started popping up in rumors, that he remembers when fans were yelling at him to get in shape, and it was his turn to get slandered and people doubted him. Tobias Harris, following the performance in the bubble, called it a lot with his contract and stuff. And what do those guys do? They continued to work. They worked on their games. Joel Embiid got his body right, is now an MVP caliber guy. Tobias Harris coming off a career year, near all-star level year, 20 points per game on almost 50, 40, 90 splits. Like, they put the work in. They took the accountability on themselves and continued to work. And now when it comes to Ben Simmons being the one that falls short and he's being the one that's having the finger pointed at him, he wants to take his ball and go home. So if I'm Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris, and this is a guy that has been by my side for years, they've had a lot of deep playoff scars together from the Raptor series to what happened in the bubble to this season, there should be a camaraderie there. And it feels like Simmons is just purposely alienating himself and now has decided that he wants no more parts of this.
Yeah, I mean, Joel, I especially think should have issue with this, and the fact that like these two have been painted as the face of the franchise to make this run together for so long, and that Embiid, when he went on that Twitter run, which started very funny and turned serious very quickly with the Real Madrid trade rumors and then transitioning to the real Sixers stuff. But I think that was specifically brought up as like this is not me driving Simmons out, and that was one of the purpose that he wanted him back. With that, like this is not a me or him issue, which it has never portrayed to be. And I understand Philly is not the easiest place to play. Philly fans are not the easiest people to please, but I refuse to put any responsibility on the situation on fans and for any like Ben Simmons has had his window to improve. I don't think he has been remotely criticized more than any other athlete, and he's been rightfully criticized for not showing growth in areas and improving and doing his job, become a better basketball player and take this team to the next level. And the fact of the matter is the whole tone of this offseason is in an entirely different place if he showed up in that Hawks series. And if he was a better player, they do win that series. And honestly, if we lose in the conference finals to seemingly the Bucks, like we aren't sitting here feeling great right now, but there's not this end of the world feeling that there has been this whole offseason. And just that game 7, the past Matisse is always going to stand out, but just like getting by that, and if it was like there was steps taken in the right direction, things would be so different right now.
And it's really terrible to think that could potentially and might be the last image we remember of Ben Simmons in a Sixers uniform, which is like personally to me very devastating. I'm not gonna lie, but say let's kind of change gears here to another reality, and maybe this is out of pocket a little bit, but say Ben does show up. He comes in, it's time to think about how do you go to fix this. And Sean and I have talked about this a lot, and there are some options. Is Tyrese Maxey an option to be the starting point guard next year and to try to move Ben off the ball to kind of optimize him in the half court?
That's tough because I guess that means that Seth Curry slides into the 6-man super sub type guy.
Basically,
Here's my thing, and I know a lot of people begged for a change in the starting lineup last year too. While the Sixers had their flaws, the starting lineup was far from one of them. Their starting lineup, their starting 5 was one of the best in the NBA in terms of advanced metrics and such. And I think it's one of those why mess up a good thing. I think if you keep Simmons in the way he is, I think if you could explore more into using Seth Curry more on the ball, that could potentially be an avenue. But in terms of Maxey, I understand wanting to hand him the keys, and he showed so much promise. And, guys typically make their biggest jump between years 1 and 2. So there's a lot to be excited with. But this is a team that still has championship aspirations. And I think that's a lot of pressure to put on a going to be 21 by the end of the regular season old guard. I think that if they can, really cement him in as that 6-man and be kind of the microwave scorer that they've needed in the playoffs for the past few years, that is the best avenue for Tyrese Maxey to really, I guess, reach his limits in terms of how important he can be for the 76ers. But I mean, everything's certainly an option. I think that if Simmons were to defer to anybody, it might be Maxey. I mean, they are represented by the same group. They train together all off season. They have to have some kind of relationship. So I would say maybe that gives it a realistic avenue. But in my eyes, if Simmons comes back, it'd be kind of hard not to keep the starting 5 as is.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely that first of all, I think it's unlikely that this happens in general, and especially off the rip. So I think that like the starting lineup would have to be adjusted at the start no matter what. And Maxey is certainly the guy that should get tossed in there. My biggest proponent for getting Maxey in the starting lineup is just he is so young. There's still so much to have, and I want to juice every last bit of him that he has in the tank. But even just getting him in the regular rotation as a six man and getting consistent minutes, because he really did not see that throughout the whole season last year, it will be so huge in like his development with that. And frankly, this is a ton of expectation to throw on a guy who is once again 20 years old. He was the 21st overall pick, and a guy that like has already overplayed what we expected from him so quickly. And that's a lot to throw on his shoulders, but he is kind of the X factor that is the sliver of hope in this. And just keeping, and frankly, I think he's capable. So I'm willing to keep building on this. If Simmons does come back, it's tough. I don't mind the idea of Curry with the second unit, just based on I think he can be a focal point in a way that he isn't when centered around Tobias and Embiid, and just that we saw it in the playoffs with him pretty much carrying us for stretches. And I think that would be cool with the second unit. But I don't know. It's so tough. I can't imagine a world where Simmons comes back to make this a problem.
It's like we spent so much time in these hypotheticals that like, and I want to talk about like trade rumors and things of that nature. So like what packages or offers have been put on the table, because there's been some interesting stuff today. But the hypotheticals are getting exhausting at this point. I feel like we've done so much of, oh, if this happens or if this happens, and I can't really remember a time as a Sixers fan going 1 week away from training camp without having really any idea of what this team's actually going to look like in 3 weeks. Like they play basketball in a month, like less than a month. They play a regular season basketball game in like late October. We don't know what this team is going to look like. Like we really, because if a trade happens, more than likely it's going to be more than just Ben that goes. So there's a couple things today. We're not even going to talk about the Sean Bernard trade machine.
Oh, can
saga.
We can.
So, okay, well, all right, we'll go into it. So, Sean proposed recently. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about John Wall, which personally I was completely against. Sean had some interesting points, but is there any interest from you, Kev, just in a John Wall at all? And then I would like to have Sean explain himself, because I don't want to paint him in a poor light.
Not in the slightest. John Wall is a shell of himself. I mean, the injuries really took a toll. I get people might want to take a chance on him that maybe he could be the old John Wall. And while he definitely, if there would be times where he showed flashes of his old self, but I don't think holding on to Ben Simmons all summer and then trading him for John Wall a week, days before a training camp is anywhere near the right move. I mean, the Sixers have enough injury concerns as it is. I think trading for a guy with another long rap sheet is far from the right decision in this mess.
Yeah. All right. So let me get to my defense here. So first off, the full trade is 3-team trade between Rockets, Cavs, and Sixers. So the Cavs come away with Ben Simmons, Rockets come away with Tobias Harris, and Sixers get Kevin Love, John Wall, Colin Sexton, Usman Garuba, and 3 first-round picks. So first, I mean, there's no trades that in any of these scenarios that I feel great about walking away with. My opinion here is any deal you're doing, you're building to eventually get another superstar to pair with an Embiid. And anything you're looking to do is finding the assets to make that happen, because simply there are no stars of the caliber that we need available right now. There's no Dame Lillards, there's no Bradley Beals, there's no Zach LaVines on the market. So you're doing this in faith that one day there will be. Now, with these guys, you're cutting years off the contract. Both Wall and Kevin Love have 2 years. So first off, there's the off chance that John Wall does catch the lightning in bottle and at least is something valuable. That's not even what I'm banking on. We're 2 years off there. We got a 29-year-old Joel Embiid with 2 free max slots, 3 additional first-round picks, and a load of young guys. That's not a terrible spot to be in as a franchise.
So you want to turn the big three from Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and Tobias Harris to Joel Embiid, John Wall, and Kevin Love. Do you think that big three even competes with – well, it definitely doesn't compete with Brooklyn.
No.
I don't think it competes with Milwaukee either. Nope. To be honest, I think I'd put Miami's big three ahead of it too, with Lowry, Butler, and Adebayo. I mean, that it's just – you're not competing in the East with that big three. I'm sorry.
For 2 years, you're not. But my position on this is that you're setting yourself up. The big three of Embiid, Tobias Harris, and Ben Simmons simply isn't good enough, and we're never going to see where it goes from here. It looks like you need another legitimate perimeter star if we're paired with Embiid, if we're ever creating for a championship. So we need to set ourselves up as a franchise to be in the best possible position to add this. So you're getting, in 2 years from now, There's 2 free max spaces that you can add guys in free agency. Sixers aren't a great free agency destination, so I don't even know if that's worth banking on. But we this year I already pretty much look at as a wash as far as competing, just based on we don't know what the team's going to be. So that it's now 1 year. Those are both expiring contracts, which are super easy to do that with picks and young guys in a trade. So John Wall, along with like whoever the young guy and 5 first-round pick deal for, whether it's Donovan Mitchell, whoever is the guy that shakes free, the ultimate goal here is adding a star. There's simply none available right now, so all I'm doing is setting myself up for when a guy is.
I'm so sick that you just said Donovan Mitchell. And
Yeah,
I know that I know that he's good. I know that he is, but I would be
I hate
so
him
sick
too.
if Donovan Mitchell was a 76er.
You also need to account of you don't know what Joel Embiid's going to look like in 2 years.
2
You have to
years.
strike while the iron's hot now, while he is a top. Anyone could argue he bare minimum he's a top 5 to 7 guy in the league right now. He was arguably the most dominant player in the league last season. Like, you have to dominate on this now. You don't know how much he has left in the tank. As scary as it sounds, I mean, 2 years from now, his whole career trajectory could still look great, or it could also be on the very opposite end. So I think taking a gamble like that is just playing with fire almost to the extreme.
Yeah,
So
fair. Real question for both of you guys. So we run that back this same exact roster as last year with John Wall on the team instead of Ben Simmons. Do the Sixers beat the Hawks?
I don't think so.
John Wall's no, I have no faith in John Wall. I don't even think John Wall's healthy playoff time.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I think they
exactly.
absolutely beat the Hawks.
You're thinking like you
I
literally
think they
just
beat the
take,
Hawks if Danny Green isn't hurt. I mean,
Also
we don't
agree
even
with
have
that.
to talk. But
yeah,
who defends Trae Young?
not John Wall.
Not
Yeah,
John.
Seth Curry.
far from John Wall. Trae Young would run
Yeah.
circles around. Obviously, Matisse could soften some of the blow, but due to his offensive inabilities, you can't play him for the long stretches that you could with Simmons because of what he brought as a facilitator. So there is a lot of strong question marks. I mean, obviously, there's a reality for anything. Joel Embiid was phenomenal in that series. I think if things go a little bit different, that they walk away with that series win. So obviously there could be a small reality where they beat the Hawks if you replace John Wall with Ben Simmons, but you're not beating Milwaukee with John Wall instead of Ben Simmons. Like, you're not beating Phoenix in the finals with John Wall instead of Ben Simmons. So I feel like it's a waste of time of a hypothetical, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So let's move to another like hypothetical trade that, and again, I don't know how much weight you put into a Stephen A. Smith report, but he did mention today that there was rumblings of an offer of Cj McCollum, Rocco, and a couple firsts. And Kev, you seemed pretty fond of that idea. And when it comes down to it, I said all summer, like a CJ for Ben swap isn't great for you, but if that's the options right now and that's the best that you can do, and looking at the pretty dark future, the imminent future that's upon us, is that something that you're pulling the trigger on if that's an actual offer, like even say just tomorrow?
I think it's one that I'm heavily considering. Getting CJ McCollum is far from the home run swing that Daryl Morey's known for, but I think it's the type of lateral move that keeps them in a spot to contend. Sean talked a little bit earlier about how great Seth Curry was in the postseason and how well he played alongside Joel Embiid. And that's with Seth Curry. Now, no disrespect to Seth Curry, but if you put a high-powered guard like CJ McCollum alongside Joel Embiid, I think that can elevate his game as well. And CJ McCollum, proven scorer, can get it done on all 3 levels. I think he's been above 20 points per game for the last 6 seasons. So, that definitely is a great move in the own right, and it gives you that perimeter creator that the Sixers have needed in the postseason for so long. Also, adding Covington helps with the defense as well. It gives you a plethora of wing defenders from Danny Green, Matisse Thybulle, Tobias Harris, Robert Covington. So I think when you're facing the Brooklyns and the Milwaukees, you're going to want all that wing depth in terms of defense. So it's one I'd heavily consider. I think it's not a great move in any sense, but if things truly go south for Ben Simmons and you can still get that kind of package, I think that's about as close as to a win as they can get.
Yeah, at this point, I think that's again. I don't think there's any real trade scenario at this point there. As Sixers fans, we're jumping up and down thrilled about. I just don't see the market and the value rebounding that significant amount. That this is something that at this point I would probably pull the trigger on. And I think I'm higher on CJ McCollum than most. I think the rep that he get, that's kind of tied to like the Blazers underperforming in the playoffs isn't true. He has some impressive playoff numbers, and he's probably the best perimeter scorer that would be paired with Embiid that he's been matched up on. And I know he's obviously overshadowed by Dame in a lot of ways because of the similar play style and everything. And Dame would obviously be the perfect guy here. But CJ is not bad whatsoever. It's concerning the defensive issues when we think about with Curry and things like that, and some rotational issues that come along with it. But with Rocco is huge, getting the additional defensive help. The first round picks, I know people are brushing them over, but I'm a huge fan of adding picks in this deal and would really make that a priority just based on, once again, I think that this full lineup is not fixed in one move. So you still need to position yourself to be ready to swing for the fence when somebody comes along. So like you said, Kev, it's a kind of a lateral move, but one that keeps them above and realistically gives them a better chance to win than they have right now.
Yeah, and the rotation issues are always going to be there if Doc Rivers is your coach. So, you deal with that later on, I guess.
You need that depth for the upcoming 11-man playoff rotation again. So
yeah, exactly right. So before we let you go, Kev, I do want to ask you just one more thing. There was a lot of, a little bit of turmoil with the Timberwolves today, the firing of their president of basketball operations and their apparent interest in Elton Brand. How much do you really care about that? Is that something that you're looking into at all? Or is that just something that is that just a Timberwolves thing type to do?
I mean, it's tough. Obviously, when Daryl Morey was connected to Gerson Rosas, so obviously seeing him on the way out, he loses a connection in that front office. But who they promoted, I'm not even going to try and say his name correctly, also worked with Daryl in Houston and also worked under Sam Hinkie while he was here. So the connection's still strong. In terms of Elton Brand, I mean, obviously it would be phenomenal because it's somebody that Daryl Morey's worked alongside with, so they already have that kind of rapport. But at the end of the day, I mean, rumors are just rumors. I feel like it's things you don't really start talking about them in all seriousness until it has real traction and things really seem like they're in place.
The only thing I'm saying that I'm shocked about is just the timing of it. I think it's crazy to let president of basketball operations run a whole offseason, run a draft, run free agency, do your thing, and then a week ahead of training camp, you're fired is, to me, the biggest thing. Like, he's already made the moves, just let him see it out. So I guess if this was at the beginning of the offseason, to me, it would be kind of a non-story, but just the fact of when it happened and how relevant. So who knows, maybe they had a little different. Simmons might even have been the difference of opinion that ended things there, and the view on that and the outlook moving forward.
Yeah, it's nice to know that other teams don't know what they're doing either, because we've seen it in Philadelphia for so long. So at least everyone else is struggling too, or a good amount of the teams are struggling as well. So Kev, we really appreciate your time, man. It's always a pleasure with K-Mac. You can follow him at Kevin McNBA, which is a fantastic handle. Follow him, check him out at 97.3, all that good stuff. Kev, you have anything to plug other than your Sports Illustrated articles, whatever you got?
Nope, that's about it.
All right, cool. Well, we appreciate it, man, and we'll definitely be talking to you soon.
Looking forward to it.